We are back, ladies and gentlemen. HLTV Confirmed Episode 9 coming at you thick and fast on this Monday evening. Thank you for joining us. Just quickly, tonight we're going to be going over some bits and pieces to do with ESL, their Pro League, their plans for 2020. Bring Apex on later. Going to be talking to him about all things Counter-Strike, checking in with ICE, the first week of Blast, all that good stuff. But as usual, we've got the regulars here. Prof, my question to you this week is, what is the key to happiness?
If I knew, I'd tell you.
Okay, great. That was fantastic. Striker, do you believe in true love?
I haven't found it, so no.
Okay, Lucas, smooth or crunchy peanut butter?
Can I select
Obviously
none?
smooth.
None? Okay, great. You don't like peanut butter at all. That's fantastic. Now, as everyone can see, Carmac is here. Michal, first of all, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm a little bit nauseous from an allergy shot, but hopefully it's not going to affect my performance.
Okay, yeah, no, I have that worry every night. But look, first, we're going to get stuck into this straight away because we've only got an hour with you. You've got some very important Blood Bowl games to be playing this evening. So, look, we understand that, we respect that, and we're very appreciative of you being here with us. So we'll kick this one off straight away. We've got you here because, obviously, a lot of stuff in the news recently with ESL, B-Side, obviously Blast, all these different leagues. Before we get stuck into that, and I'm going to be handing that stuff over towards Striker because I am going to be involved with Pro League. So obviously, I don't want to be sitting here asking all those questions from a biased position. But first of all, can you kind of introduce yourself to maybe the viewers who aren't familiar with you and your history just a little bit for everyone at home?
Yeah, sure. So where do I begin? I was an Unreal tournament player back in the old ages where half of the HLTV forums were in nappies, which is around 2001. A couple of years later, I became an esports journalist. For a long time, I was an esports journalist, and my work was kind of my, let's say, job interview to ESL. And in 2009, I joined ESL. And I was given control of the Intel Extreme Masters. And until recently, I was managing Intel Extreme Masters hands-on. Right now, somebody else does it and does it extremely well. And I am responsible for things like, let's say, leading the design on the things like ESL Pro Tour and a couple of other things for ESL.
Okay, so just quickly, your title is VP of Pro Gaming, right? Is that correct? Okay, so that's the title right there that you've got to your name. Now I'm going to hand this over to Striker, who I know has been writing up pages and pages of notes to ask questions. So Striker, you want to take this one away?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess we should preface this with what we know about EPL, right? And what has been announced already, which is that it has been cut down from 48 teams to used to be, 4 like a regular season in regions in Americas, Europe, Asia, and Oceania. That has been cut down to 24 teams total with all the regions combined into one. Each season will last something like 6 weeks. I'm pretty sure that has been announced officially too. Teams split into 4 round robin groups leading into playoffs. And then the top 6 stage onwards is basically going to look the same as we have seen it so far at the playoffs or the finals, basically.
Oh, we get there a little bit differently.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, when you reach the top 6 stage, that's where it's going to be a little bit more, I guess, what we've seen so far, right?
Correct. I mean, just to give the detail a little bit different, because we get from 16 to 6 a little bit differently than from 24 to 6.
Yep.
Where if you win your group, you're going to play in the play-ins. So group winners, depending on the results of the play-ins, it's just a single match against another group winner. You either go straight to the semis or you get to the quarters, basically. Whereas seconds and thirds are playing to get to the quarters.
Okay.
I hope I visualized it correctly.
Yeah.
Maybe
the thing is, like, I know what it is, so I understand it. Hopefully the viewers do too, from what you just said. But I mean, technically it's like a playoffs with like a pre-stage where the teams that already made it to like the top 12, is that the top 12? Top 12, yeah. Basically play each other before.
I mean, what is, I guess, most important for viewers to understand, it's not like Pro League now, like the Pro League finals are a separate tournament, like it kind of was before, where the group stage was kind of like a qualifier, and then at the actual LAN event, everything got reset, and then you more or less used kind of just like everyone was on the same level. Now, depending on how you qualify, you go into a different part of the bracket.
Well, part of the idea, I would say, is Pro League practically when you had that Pro League week or weekend, felt exactly like an ESL One or like an IEM tournament. 16 teams, two double elimination groups of 8, and it didn't feel any different. And stages before that, they kind of felt like a glorified qualifier to some degree. So part of the idea was to create like a tournament that has a different feeling and a different flavor to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically like leading into the first question that I had, because behind basically the changes that have been implemented, right? Obviously, like that's a part of it. So yeah, what was the vision, and why were the changes really necessary to this like that drastic degree, really?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, you want to make it a there are two kind of degrees to it. One is the business angle, the other one is the sporting angle. From a sporting angle, you want to have the most sexy tournament you can possibly have. And having, let's say, a North American division, no disrespect to anyone, is less interesting by nature than a European division. So there was basically an intent from everyone to have a global division. So the moment we land at 24, we don't have divisions split into regions or anything like that, but the best teams in the world, with a little bit of regional diversity, play from the first game on, rather than we have to go through let's say the relatively by comparison less interesting regional divisions, and then we go to the top 16, which is the playoffs. Second, if we're creating a league which is supposed to produce business value for the tournament organizer and some degree of guaranteed business value for teams, obviously it's better for them to also start in a narrower field at the main event level, which is also a consideration. And if you look at B-side, for example, they have 10 teams. I believe it's rumored 10 teams and another 2 qualified. I haven't been really paying attention. Please correct me.
Yeah, that's right, though. That's right.
So that is clearly designed to give very guaranteed levels of exposure to all the teams, presumably because they're buying in and want to have a return on their investment in airtime value. So it's basically the narrower it is, the more airtime value you are able to guarantee to your partner teams or member teams.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it almost sounds to me like it's kind of a response to what B-side is doing from what you're saying. Can you say that if that's the case, really?
I mean, the way it all originated, I think, and I don't remember. Sorry, I have no knowledge of who approached whom in the beginning, but the PEA kind of woke up from its winter slumber, and there was conversations between the PEA and ESL again, and for quite a long time. The North American teams that are now behind B-side were in conversation with ESL, and then, as far as I understand it, I wasn't in the business conversations at all. I was more on the design side rather than on the business conversation side. But as far as I understand it, at some point it became clear that there would not be an agreement reached between some teams and ESL, and they split up and decided to start doing their own thing. So actually, I wouldn't say it was a response probably to teams who have found that they enjoy the franchise model in the North American and now European also franchise leagues from other games, and decided to try it. The reason they really like it is because the moment they sign up for a league like that, that increases the attractiveness of that company for prospective investors. So let's say my team is valuated at $100 million, and we argue that signing up for a permanent Counter-Strike league spot is increasing my company value by 5%. I just made $5 million right there. I mean, it's not as simple as that, but just to simplify it a little bit, the company value is now 105 million with one signature, and this is something that currently the teams seem to be craving, among many other things like revenue, profit sharing, and things like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the financial side is definitely something that's been a really hot topic, just because of that's kind of being repeated as the reason for B-side emerging. Creating a new revenue share model, and generally people have been saying that the tournament organizers are bleeding money. So can you speak to the business side a little bit as well, and give some examples so that people realize what kind of costs go into organizing a big arena event like an ESL One Cologne?
Yeah, I mean, it's relatively clear to me that lots of people commenting, no disrespect to anyone, but are very, very distant from the truth in what they imagine to be true. It's quite easy to see in, let's say, in conversation about booths, for example, right? You have a problem. Why don't you just buy booths? Well, this proper good soundproof booths at the international level in Dota, those cost, I think, around $700,000 to $800,000 for a pair. So that's what we're talking about. If you make them a little bit cheaper, let's assume you can get a pair, let's say, for $300,000 because you constructed it. It's not as nice looking, and you constructed it, blah blah blah. ESL runs together with DreamHack about 10 to 12 Counter-Strike tournaments a year. So automatically you have to create multiples of those. And considering how much they travel, get assembled, disassembled, and damaged, you need to probably also have backups. So suddenly, because someone on Reddit thinks this is the right way to fix a problem, we are, $1.2 million in the hole. And the problem really isn't fully fixed either, which is something maybe for a different conversation. So people just generally seem to think, well, why don't you throw $1 million at the problem and that will be solved? Well, truth is, not a lot of millions. I'm not sitting on a lot of millions just to throw at problems. Some events make money, some events don't make money. Some events that we run in less expensive territories, they have lower rates for venue rental. Sometimes we don't pay rental, sometimes we get support from the city like we do in Katowice. Other times we go to places like New York City, which is let's say the marketing and business hub of the world, or at least the Western world, and you're going to Barclays Center, where you're competing for the weekends to rent out with Taylor Swift, the sports franchises, NBA, etc., etc. So it's not like you're gonna say, hey, hi, I'm ESL, take any weekend you want, my friends, no problem, right? So you just have to pay the standard rate, and you go in, and it's way more expensive, next to paying the union labor. If those of you who don't know what that is, that basically means in the US, if you rent out a venue, usually there's a union that is exclusive to that venue, and you have to purchase work from them. You can't bring in your own people to build the stage and everything. It's actually the union that provides them, and it's extremely expensive compared to Europe. So some events make less money, some events make more money. Some of them are straight in the red, some of them are a little bit in the green. But we do them for different reasons. Some of them are just straight up great events. Some of them are important because they're important to our sponsors as well. So yeah. I can't really divulge very much in terms of how much everything costs and things like that. I think for obvious reasons. But there's another thing that's being repeated quite often when it comes to money with esports, and that is that running an online league or a league in general is very inexpensive. Yes, theoretically, yes. Even though if you think about it, you produce a large number of those, let's call them regular season matches, and then the event at the end is it's the same cost as ESL One Cologne or Intel Extreme Masters Katowice or ESL One New York. So automatically it is more expensive than a single ESL One. And the truth is, just like with the Katowice Major, we're actually not getting paid by our sponsors all that much more. For some reason, sponsors are much more interested in that cherry on top of the cake rather than the entire cake. So the rate that you actually pay for the online regular season isn't proportionate to what you would be charging a sponsor for your weekend days, in the arena in front of a big audience. I think just still that tangible thing that you can show up to it, you can touch it, you can you can hear, you can feel the roar of the crowd. That's what actually brings in the money. When we upgraded Katowice from your regular Intel Extreme Masters finals to the major, we actually didn't get any extra money from our sponsors for the minors or the challenger stage, or any extra days actually for the upgrade. We didn't get paid for that. It just doesn't work like this in when you sell sponsorships. So that just I mean, if you guys have more specific questions, I'm happy to answer those. But there's a little bit of misinformation. Like, oh, you get a major, you're going to be so rich. No, it doesn't really work like that. We actually pulled off a really good major, I think, because we had pre-existing sponsorship agreements where we knew, okay, we can build this stage, we can afford this, and we don't have to worry and scramble and try to sell.
No, I mean, that was just, I asked this mainly to kind of clarify on like the tournament organizer stance on the costs of tournaments, because obviously, like you say, there's been a lot of things, kind of assumed that aren't necessarily true. So unless the other two guys have something more specific to ask.
I want to, like, this is a question that I don't quite understand, and we asked Semler when we had him on the last time round. In terms of not like financials, like the sponsorships and all that stuff coming through to fund the events, the big conversation is Counter-Strike isn't profitable, right? What is the way that ESL envision making it profitable? Because this is the problem that like everybody seems to be bringing up at the moment: is how do we make money out of this thing? Is there like a vision that ESL have to make this a possibility? Because obviously that everybody doesn't align on the way they see this. That's why there's been this split.
I would say there's multiple things. If you look at the standard breakdown of a sports business, a ton of it is media rights. The key difference, like a huge chunk of it, is media rights. Maybe I'll speak to media rights in a little bit. Maybe I'll talk about sponsorship first, but that's going to be easier for us to with our partners, with our sponsors. What's interesting to the world's biggest brands is a big package. If you're a Mercedes, if you're an Intel, you're not interested in scouting the tiniest tournament and going to event A, event B, event C, event D, event E, just because they're individually, and if you collect them together, they're a set of the most attractive ones. You're just basically looking, okay, are we interested in the average CS fan? Yes. Okay, what's the one thing we can get for CS that's going to tick all our checkboxes? That's basically how those companies operate. So what you're trying to create in order to attract the world's biggest brands. I mean, we work right now with Pepsi, we work with Intel, we work with Vodafone, we work with Mercedes, DHL. Those brands we were able to attract because we provided them that critical mass and that comfort of, they go in, they do one deal with one partner, and everything is taken care of for the entire year. That solves a lot of, tiny, small-scale problems for them. So this is one of the reasons we've actually created the ESL Pro Tour. Next to that, it actually made sense from a sporting point of view for us, a narrative point of view. Also, making it into a what's the proper word in English? Chad, amalgam, I think. Well, amalgamation.
Yep.
Amalgamation of all our properties. Actually, if you look at esportscharts.com, I think all the properties that now make up the ESL Pro Tour produce more streaming hours than LEC and LCS put together. So that's a big thing where you can go and this is something I said on the Richard Lewis by the numbers, is that actually we don't see ourselves as being in the race with that esports tournament for Counter-Strike that is sponsored by esports pillows and a small esports esports skin company or whatever. We don't really care, and we're not even interested in in them not existing, because we're actually competing for sponsors on a much broader orbit that are on a much broader orbit. So yeah, we created the ESL Pro Tour in order to create that package that's alive for 365 days per year, and that you sign one contract and you're set. And this is, from our experience, this is what we've noticed really makes the big brands interested. Now, when it comes to media rights, there's a bit of a peculiarity in all of this, because it's a little bit different from sports, where if you run the British a British tournament or English Premier League, you're the only provider of the Premier League, and you don't have to contend with anybody for that. You've organized it, the teams are a part of it, and now you can sell exclusive rights to BT Sports and Sky Sports and make billions of dollars, actually. Whereas in esports, when you try to sell broadcast rights, there is a cap on it, because assuming you're the only one running Counter-Strike, still, I can't imagine, or any other game, I can't imagine a publisher selling those rights exclusively to a platform that would then charge the user. The publisher actually benefits from that content being available completely for free, right? So no publisher in their right mind, not even Riot Games, who probably had plenty of exclusive and paywalled content opportunities, they're not going to paywall their esports content, because their esports content generates activity in their game, engagement, and they make millions of dollars off of that. So no publisher in esports will allow you essentially to paywall the content, where a lot of that traditional revenue stream isn't there, that you don't have the potential. So you're essentially selling not to exclusive platforms. Even if you have, let's say, a monopoly, that monopoly isn't worth much, because you're selling to open platforms. You're not monetizing that very, very well if it's in the open platform, because it's not easy to monetize it very, very well. And then we go into things like buyer's market and seller's market, where if you're a streaming platform and you can get great Counter-Strike content, where Astralis plays from 3 different places, the price of Astralis playing somewhere isn't going to be very high naturally. Therefore, the creation of a league that lasts a certain amount of time, be it ESL Pro League or any other league, and is guaranteed to be uninterrupted by anything. It's a 4, 5, 6 week long story, and that the world is watching just that becomes valuable. And that's how ESL Pro League now becomes valuable, because for that period that it runs, if you want to see Astralis, that's the only place you will get it. This is where the value goes up, and this is where we potentially are able to generate more revenue from a streaming platform. So that's the plan, basically. Long story short, I skipped a couple of nuances, but that's kind of the plan for sponsorship and for media rights.
Yeah. So just tagging on to what you said there about like having a team for an extended period of time is where the revenue is generated. So then ideally
the value,
right? So ideally then you'd have a team just for yourself for a whole year, right? That would be the ideal scenario for you.
You know what? That's not a realistic real world scenario. We can discuss it, but everything Valve has done in Counter-Strike points to the fact that they are looking to have multiple parties running tournaments, and they are not interested in seeing a team committed to just a single party. So that's just not happening. regardless of whether you theoretically want it or not. It's just not going to happen until Valve shift their entire philosophy with which they approached CS:GO from the very beginning. If to answer your question, I think if we had a complete monopoly on the best teams in the world, and we're able to craft our tournament structure any way we please, we would probably be, compared to today, in relative terms, bathing in money. But that's a purely theoretical discussion.
Okay. I mean, so let's get down to some of the issues that the changes have created. First of all, if you can, let's put a timeline on this. So when were these changes finalized? When was this decision made that it was going to be cut down to half?
So the timeline is actually quite complicated because it was a long back and forth. But I'm just going to come clean and say, when the bottom line is, we've known for much too long that there would be 24 and not 48 teams to really have a proper excuse to with respect to how we communicated to the teams that were part of the reduction. The difficulty there was that because until very, very late, we didn't know exactly what the teams would be that would become a part of the Pro League from a business point of view. We didn't know exactly the list of the teams that would be a part of the reduction. We didn't know the manner in what we would complete the list of 24 teams. And that is what made us, keep our mouth shut, so to speak. Because if we had told a number of teams, hey guys, there's going to be a reduction in Pro League, but we can't say which teams are cut, we didn't give them actually any information that is very meaningful to them, because what they actually want to know from that point is, okay, am I being cut? What are my chances and things like that? So it generates a big load of chaos that doesn't really help anyone. That's what we thought at the time. In hindsight, with looking at everything, it became quite clear that we should have done something differently and given teams a heads up. But that is just the regrettable situation that we have to live with. I'm just providing an explanation that doesn't make anything that we did much better or much more excusable. I think everybody involved regrets the way it went down, but it did so.
Right. So can I just ask, was this obviously last year, end of last year, somewhere you announced the Pro Tour and kind of the changes to all of that? So that seemed fairly planned out and laid out in advance, while the Pro League changes kind of came last minute, so to say, because as you said, it was a lot of back and forth. Was the whole B-side league coming in, was that something that pushed you to do this a bit earlier than you wanted? Was this always planned? This change, was the Pro League change always planned for this season right now, or kind of how did that develop?
An interesting question. I don't know the answer properly. It's possible that maybe we would have applied the changes, without the competitive aspect to it. Maybe we would have applied the changes for season 12, 2020. Maybe not. It would depend on how the conversations would progress. Certainly, B-side being there did put some kind of time pressure to get those agreements in place so that we would know what that league looks like. One of the things also to look at with the timelines are also the timelines to qualify for or sign up for MDL, right? Season 33 The reason we actually, that fated Friday, the reason we announced the lineup of the teams we would be inviting to ESL Pro League was to make it very clear who is going to be part of the reduction, who is, potentially needing to think about signing up for Mountain Dew League instead. That was what kind of pushed the timing, and that was what kind of forced us to announce the list of teams on Friday. I mean, I heard a fairly preposterous ideas where that leaked Instagram post that we just put it in just to see what Reddit's reaction would be, and then double down on it. No, I mean, if you look at it, the Fnatic logo is the wrong Fnatic logo there, and that's one of the reasons it was taken down. The follow-up actually had the right Fnatic logo, but if you have a hammer in your hand, you'll see nails everywhere, I suppose.
So
Okay.
can I just ask
Yeah.
you to move the microphone a bit away, because I think you're
I'm sorry.
popping because of it.
I think
Yeah,
when you like speak up a little bit, it just like pops sometimes. So
Okay, hopefully this is better.
So I
yeah,
think
yeah.
what like that point you're just talking about there, Carmac, to do with that graphic as a whole, and you were talking about that they were the teams that you had invited to let the other teams know that they weren't going to be involved in this situation. I think a lot of people, like, obviously there's a lot of speculation. We spoke about different angles on this show, coming across that like it was a political type move to either like force the hand of these teams, but at the same time it was publicly known that they were having meetings with ESL at the same time. Was this something that was run past them?
Let me put it this way: if you believe the articles from DK that there is a meeting with the following teams in Paris, and the meeting is taking place until Friday, and ESL is sitting there busy talking to those teams, and then ESL, with absolutely zero heads up to those teams, puts the logos out there to put more pressure on them. I mean, does any of that add up to you? Like, if any of those teams was not really in line with that, it's probably like leaving a ball in the open goal just to score a fucking goal on us. It's actually a fairly illogical suggestion, because again, if we're in the room with a set of people and they're supposed to become our serious partners, if you believe that's part of the negotiation, what is really so bizarre, I mean, how would you think that a couple of hours after the meeting takes place, we would be posting a list of invited teams to put more pressure on them? It just seems, I don't understand how
I can try and give you like some understanding of maybe why people viewed it in that sense, because normally when these things happen, the term invited, like it's not that's not there. It's like these are the teams attending our event, right? So I think that the term invited threw a lot of people for a spin, because we did have the whole conversation going on at the time. Who's going to B-site? Who's going to Pro League? And then when that came out and the term invited is there, people are like, oh shit, is this ESL trying to like force the hand there? What you're saying, right? And obviously I mentioned at the start of this, I was very transparent about it. I will be working with ESL for Pro League, so I'm obviously biased. And I see it from that perspective of, why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense. You cutting off your nose to spite your face in that regard. But from the sense of the way it was worded, I can see why people may have had some inkling in that direction, or at least being confused.
So one of the things is that we actually gave the teams that were top 16 in Pro League the previous season, but not members, not prospective members, a deadline for Thursday night to respond as to whether or not they would play. So Made in Brazil, for example, Cloud9 said they wouldn't or didn't respond. And there were teams whose response we didn't, in fact, get by then, which we did get later on, that we invited based on the ESL World Ranking to replace Cloud9 and Made in Brazil. Those are the ones that we literally didn't know if they would say yes or no. But the other teams, come on.
Well, I mean, let's get into like how these teams were determined then, because you kind of obviously we've been alluding to these like business meetings that you've had with teams and like generally what status some of the teams will have in the league, you know, being member teams basically. So can you speak to that mechanic and how these organizations who will form like more long-term membership will be will they have in Pro League and even the rest of the ESL Pro Tour circuit?
I think to fully understand what's coming in Pro League in 2020, we actually have to start with we shouldn't necessarily think of it as a league the way we think of, you know, the Bundesliga or the Premier League, where you've got, you know, the last two teams drop out and goodbye, and then two teams from a gateway league come up. There's technically going forward not supposed to be any relegation whatsoever. There's as much relegation in Pro League as there is in ESL One Cologne or Intel Extreme Masters Katowice, in that if you finish, I don't know, 12th, well, good luck, you can requalify next time just like everybody else. That's how we approach it, and we can go into how you can qualify down the line. It's no problem. But the teams that are partner teams of the league, they will receive an invitation to start every season. I believe, unless they are underperforming quite badly over a longer period of time, those teams will also enjoy having a revenue share as well as profit sharing. And on top of this is a separate bucket, which may not be very well understood. These teams will also have a number of invitations to ESL Pro Tour events like ESL One and Intel Extreme Masters. And if they attend enough of those events, essentially they will also receive a revenue and profit share from those tournaments. And frankly speaking, I don't understand what's so terribly controversial about that point, the whole declines point, because they can decline as many tournaments as they want if they have a better opportunity to play in a, you know, $10 million event somewhere in China or Saudi Arabia or wherever. They can go and do that, but by not showing up to a big enough number of ESL Pro Tour events, they're just giving up a revenue and profit share from those from the ESL Pro Tour circuit events as opposed to ESL Pro League. I honestly don't know what's so preposterous about that.
Well, so hold on, let me just explain what I got from this, right? So basically, Pro League from now on will just be member teams from the start, and then the rest will essentially requalify every season?
More or less, yes. I mean, for season 12, we've changed the qualification structure compared to the planned to essentially remedy some of the stuff that the reduction caused. So each team that was part of the reduction can now requalify through either the Mountain Dew League Global Challenge or a qualifier that's made specifically for the teams affected by the reduction in that specific region. So let's say you're a European team, you can play in the European Mountain Dew League and then compete in the Mountain Dew League Global Challenge for one of the top 3 slots, and that guarantees you participation in the ESL Pro League. Or you can play in the European qualifier for all the affected teams, including the Mountain Dew League teams that were supposed to be part of the relegation tournament. Down the line, it's going to be a little bit different. The ESL World Ranking will be the best avenue, so that at any given time, it's not going to be the teams that were great in the previous season because maybe they were great at the time, and over 6 months a lot happened. No, we're actually gonna be inviting mainly through the ESL World Ranking to have a lot of those teams that are currently very, very good. So that competition is major-like, if you will.
Okay. So if I mean, I guess that answers the worries about.
I have a sub
Okay.
question then. So for the members team, they obviously stay in the league. You mentioned that there is some sort of like, if they are underperforming, they can be like thrown out of the league, I guess. But those details are not clear at the moment, or how does that work? Because
Well,
B-Side has their rule set with like $100,000, stuff like that.
Well, over there, the way we have it is that the decision making. So first of all, the list of teams is not closed; it's not locked in forever. So Chad starts a team and gets a fantastic roster, and they wreck everybody, and they're doing a great job in every single aspect. They may very well be voted in to become a member team. But then after sometimes they could also be voted out if they don't meet performance criteria, essentially.
Just to touch on that, because I read the leak of the Lanxess agreement, and then it said that if you add in a new team, they have to do like a buy-in of some sort, which then gets distributed to the other teams. Is that something that's also confirmed as of now?
Honestly, I don't remember. As
Okay.
I've mentioned before on the call, I was more on the design side from a sporting perspective, product perspective, rather than the business side. So I'm sorry, I'm unable to answer this question.
I mean, can we at least get an idea of how many teams are going to be member teams? How many spots there will be to? Because the reports say like up to 16. Some said like at least 13, and it's kind of confusing, the information we've had regarding this. So
you should expect around 13 teams.
Okay.
To be partner teams for 2020.
Okay. I mean,
okay, so my next question was to ask about these. So the teams that are not member teams, obviously, like being in a league, as you mentioned before, with the B-side thing, it's not just about being and competing there, but for the value it brings to an org. Because if you're a part of the team, then you most likely are going to stay in the league and stuff like that. But in the way you put it here, with only the member teams being reinvited and then everyone else having to requalify, it seems like the worth of having a Pro League team isn't that big for the non-member teams, right? That's how it plays out.
Hold on. Can you please rephrase?
Well, basically, what he's implying is that the incentive to play in a Pro League is basically the same as the incentive to play in like an ESL One Cologne or any other tournament any other tournament of a similar stature, right? There's
if you're not a member team.
Yeah, of course, as a non-member team.
Well, I mean, the prize money. There's obviously prize money and all the factors that you take in. Yeah, I suppose that's fair to say. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess a follow-up to that would be, is there like room for member teams in the future to increase in number, right? So you've said potentially 13 now. In the future, does that number change? Like, does it go up? Are there more teams who are able to qualify for that kind of status?
Right now, the thinking is that 16 is the cap, but I don't know. Maybe down the line, I know 3 years down the line, maybe the number of teams overall in the league is 50. Because CS is growing or whatever. Maybe not. Maybe it stays flat for the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6, 10 years. I don't know. But for the foreseeable future, 16 is the cap.
And do you know for how long these deals have been made? How long do these member teams basically have the deal for?
That's a question I'm afraid I'm going to have to skip.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's something we missed regarding the specifics.
I guess we have to talk about the ESL ranking, because you said that is the I see the smile. But the main point is about that being the main avenue into Pro League that you touched on, because that is going to be, I mean, it already is where you base your invites on.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things we discussed on the show before is that potentially being a member team and then having the invites to Pro Tour gets you more spots in these big events, and then by default you get more points moving forward. So let's just give an example. Let's say G2 realistically they're a top 15 team, or maybe they're like bottom top 20, who knows. I'm not saying they are right now, just like let's imagine. but they are member teams, so they get invited to ESL Cologne, they get invited to a couple of these IEMs, and then even if they finish like 15, 16, or they get one win, they're gonna be earning like more points than if you win 2 DreamHack Opens, right? So they'll by default kind of self-propagate themselves in the ranking. That's how it feels. So what is your take on this?
I would generally say that the self-fulfilling prophecy of the high ranking applies whether or not you use the ESL World Ranking or the HLTV ranking, which a lot of the tournament organizers use, because it's if you get invited to any event based on the fact that you're ranked highly somewhere, and more often than not, the rankings are quite similar in the top, let's say 12. They're relatively similar to each other in terms of the results that they pretend to produce.
But my kind of question, just to point at them more directly, is
I know your question. I'll
is about the member teams getting an invite. Not, it doesn't matter which their rank is, right?
However, if you get invited to any other tournament or perform in any other tournament, you're still going to be high up in the ESL World Ranking, and you're still going to be able to get those invites consistently and win points consistently. So I would say, I think yes, there would be a small advantage for the member teams based on those invites, but I don't think that in general the ESL Pro Tour it's constructed in a way where if you're a top team, if you're a really strong team, you will break through. Anybody that knows me well for a long time, the fact that you can qualify from the national championship, let's say in Germany, directly to a DreamHack Open. If you win it, you're guaranteed to go to a DreamHack Open. If you win a DreamHack Open, you are guaranteed to go to the next Masters level event and potentially go there. Instead of hoping to play, 3 DreamHack Opens to maybe get a ranking high enough that you get on the fringes of an invite list to some tournament. That process now, if you're really good, if you're undeniably good, it's direct. You go through. That is something I'm a big proponent of. The qualification for the championship events, which is Cologne and Katowice in the ESL Pro Tour, is that if you're top 8 in the ESL Pro Tour, which is specifically ESL Pro Tour events, if you're top 8 in that ranking, you get qualified directly. If you're 9 to 16, you're qualified for the play-in, and the rest of it is actually for top teams that were not necessarily part of the ESL Pro Tour. So maybe you only played majors. Oh, actually, we count major points, but maybe you only played Blast and B-Site and Epicenter and Starladder and everything, and you did extremely well, and your ranking is very, very high. You're still going to be invited to the play-in for Cologne and for Katowice based on that. So it's all designed in a way where if you're good, you will break through. It's going to be maybe at times mildly inconvenient, but nothing insurmountable. It's not completely firewalled or anything like that. Not in my estimation, at least.
I mean, with time being kind of scarce, we're kind of approaching like the end of the first hour. So we kind of wanted to get into also what Valve came out with recently, with the introduction of the major ranking events, which is obviously an important topic for every TO at this moment, because obviously it gives them the opportunity to suggest a major ranking event to Valve. So yeah, what's your stance on what Valve have come out with earlier and how it affects you guys and the schedule in 2020 that is already in place?
So I'm gonna have to guess part of what you said because I was lagging terribly for the first half of what you said. But I take it it's the Valve's plans to run a ranking to qualify for the major for the Legends. I think that is 6 months is a very long time in Counter-Strike. A lot of things can happen, and you might have a fantastic 2 weeks or 3 weeks at the major, and you go to your next event and you're actually not really that good. And we've had a couple of majors like that where this did happen. So it is certainly a better, in my estimation, it's a much better manner of picking the top 8 teams. it happens to be very, very similar to what we designed actually in the ESL Pro Tour, which I think will be, if I'm speaking honestly, I think it's going to be a little bit confusing for certain fans if there are two similar ways to qualify for for the top events in the CS calendar. I think I can tell you right now, we would like to be considered for those events that determine the legends. So ESL would like to run those events. We generally very much enjoy collaborating, working with Valve on majors and other things. So most likely, if there is a tournament that is a points giving tournament by ESL, that's a points giving tournament for the legend status. It's also going to be a points giving tournament for the ESL Pro Tour, and they will coexist. It might be a little bit confusing to people, but when has CS not been confusing?
Right.
I think-
Can I ask a clarifying question? Does that mean that Cologne can be one of these tournaments or not?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
When I remember,
Actually, not can, but are you considering it? Right.
Not currently, no.
That's what I was assuming. Just because
the restrictions,
obviously the
right?
problem is a restriction with the ESL Pro League, Pro Tour. I'm sorry, versus what Valve's requirements are, right? I assume that's the main problem.
We're going to be sending an email and proposing two events to Valve.
Okay.
Which ones I'm not going to say, not allowed to say, but two events, and neither of them is ESL One Cologne.
Okay. I mean, is it possible that the timing that Valve came out with is going to affect the leagues or any other stuff that you have scheduled for that portion, which is I think the portion is July to end of September, right? And we assume that the second round or the second season of the leagues will happen somewhere in that span.
Not that the answer is not that I am aware. However, I may be a little bit unaware of certain things, but not that I'm aware.
Okay, because like obviously if the leagues happen for like 6 weeks straight, that prevents the teams from traveling around for a major ranking event. So that's why I'm asking if this could become an issue, because the timings seem to work this way.
So I have another question. Obviously, one of the most asked questions, maybe not low-key most asked questions, is like, is IEM Sydney gonna come back or another event in Australia? I'm wearing my Chiefs jacket here, so shout out to all of the Aussies down there. Been there 3 times. So is it gonna happen again? Do you have plans to return?
I love Australia, that's all I can say.
Okay.
Me too. That's pretty cool. We all like Australia. Michal, we'll get you for a couple more minutes before we have to let you go. Obviously, you guys have the first major of this year. I don't know if you had too much more to ask, Striker, but I just figured we may as well close it out on a fun note.
Transition into that too, so go for it.
Is there anything that you can maybe get all the fans excited with about ESL One, coming up for the major?
So I don't know to what degree that is exciting.
Open question.
But Sean and I will be working the tournament. It's actually going to be the first ESL One ever that I'm working on directly, managing, and Sean as well, Sean Clark. If you don't know who he is, he's a former World Cyber Games champion in Command & Conquer and a very well-known former StarCraft 2 commentator. Now he runs Intel Extreme Masters. He's much more capable than I ever was at doing it, so... we're going to be running the event. We will be applying basically, whatever you remember from the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice experience in terms of communication, tournament system, the way we approach it. We will be applying very much a similar approach. We will be applying also the seeding system. I've never told anyone kind of out in the public, but we'll be applying the same seeding system as we did in Katowice, where the teams rate each other, with the one suggestion from Valve, which is, by the way, a very intelligent suggestion, that after the challenger stage, if there is a ranking of those teams that make it from 1 to 8, the teams that then seed each other for the legend stage, you're not allowed to break the order in which the results came in from 1 to 8 for the challenger team. So, for example, if let's say, I don't know,
you can't change your mind basically, like from the first stage to second, or
not change your mind. You have to use the actual results of the challenger stage to rate all the challenger teams respective to each other.
okay.
That
So
makes sense.
you can drop in a Legends team in between challenger team number 1 and challenger team number 2, right? But you can't place challenger team number 2 higher than challenger team number 1 in your seeding.
Right. Okay.
Because
So in an example, like if one team goes 3-0 and another team goes like 2-3, you can't put that 2-3 team above the 3-0 team.
correct, 100% correct. But you can squeeze in Legends in between them any way you please, but you're not allowed to change the order that was dictated by actual performance, which is very logical and actually very, very fair. So,
yeah, that makes perfect sense.
that's a great suggestion, and it came from Valve.
That's unusual.
I don't want to. I don't want to take credit from my dealings with Valve, and take it for what it's worth. But from my dealings with Valve, they've been very, very intelligent and creative, and they're also actually quite brave compared to all other publishers. Actually, I'm used to working with other publishers where we do projects either for them or with them, and there's usually a really great deal of reporting and ensuring the publisher, hey, look, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing this, we're doing that. Typical response from Valve is, yeah, good luck, we trust you, it's fine, good luck, thanks for telling us, no problem. If I don't email them for 2-3 months, I'm not going to hear from them. They're just confident that we're able to deliver, and that gives us a lot of freedom. And they're just brave like that they're not worried that something's going to happen to their major.
I guess one thing that you can also comment on is like how fast the tickets got sold, because I think that's kind of gotten buried. And as far as I know, it was very fast.
It was actually really, really mind blowing, and I got the number of times I read Maracana on Twitter on that day is absolutely crazy. And you never know, right? And nobody, when we announced the tournament, nobody said, you should go to Maracana, it's so obvious, blah, 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 blah. And then when the tickets sold out and people couldn't get them, you should have gone to Maracana, it's so obvious. Yeah. And by the way, open stadiums and generally daylight type stadiums, arenas, don't work for esports very well.
I've seen that a couple of times. We've had those attempts.
Some in Ukraine or whatever, right?
Star Series was one of them, yeah.
Well, I think if everyone's happy, we might leave it there because we have to do a little changeover now. We got to get Carmac out. We've got to bring Apex in. Carmac, is there anything else you want to say before we let you go?
No, I'm just surprised that the C word wasn't mentioned by you, but I suppose you didn't get that much airtime. Like
I said at the start, I wanted to be transparent with everybody, let everyone know that I'm going to be involved in Pro League, so I didn't want to be the one asking the questions to seem like some biased motherfucker. So I took a step back in this one right here, but we definitely appreciate your time and coming on here and giving everybody ESL's side of things. I think it's very important. This is a lot of stuff that the people at home never will understand unless they get a chance to talk to you or hear from you, and that's something that I've had the privilege to do in the past. So yeah, thank you for coming on. Striker, Prof, you guys got anything you want to say?
That's fine.
Good luck with the major at the Pro League.
Thanks very much.
And with your Blood Bowl game.
Obviously. Of course. Thanks.
All right, guys. So as you just heard from us there, as we're closing that one out, we will be getting Apex on any minute. The C word is cunt, in case you guys missed it. So we've said it now, so we've got it out there. Look, that conversation right there, if you you're 16, 17, 18, and you just want to know about Counter-Strike, probably not very interesting for you. But if you seem to be like some of these people on the internet who want to know everything going on behind the scenes, this is a very important conversation to have. We've obviously had Semler as a spokesperson on before. From B-Site. Maybe we'll try and get somebody else from B-Site on. I saw Duncan made a tweet about information coming out with B-Site later next week, I think it was, or later.
It's meant to be this week.
Okay,
it's 2 days from now. It's on the 5th, I think.
It's Monday, so that's okay. Cool. So maybe, I'm working at Blast with Duncan. Maybe I'll have a chat with him. We'll see if we can get him on as a guest to talk more B-Side stuff. Okay. He'll come on. I'll have a chat with him. Well, maybe he'll come on. I'll have a talk with him. We'll see if he wants to come on. And then maybe as we continue this, we can get team owners on. Maybe we get somebody who is going to go with the ESL Pro League side of things, get them on to hear why they chose that over the B side. Somebody from B side, the same thing. We'll keep this going, guys, over the next couple of weeks, because this is all the side of Counter-Strike that, look, I've got no idea about. I just fucking talk about the game.